everybody. In this episode, we're going to be talking about our concrete saw and how to use it. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, Brian, you're a plumber. What are you doing cutting concrete? Well, you see, every now and again, there's an uh-oh, and we have to go fix it. Most houses nowadays, and pretty much all of your businesses, are built on a concrete slab. And our plumbing drain lines and some water lines are underneath that slab. And if something happens in between the time that we ran that pipe and that concrete was poured, there might be a problem and we have to go fix it. Some of those things could be maybe somebody got on there and drove a truck across that pad or a skid steer or something, and they pushed that pipe down and put a belly in it. I've seen guys drive rebar or those metal curbing spikes through the pipe. All kinds of different things can happen. Very rarely is it the plumber that made the mistake, but it does happen. And it's our responsibility to get in there and repair that pipe. So we're going to use something like this concrete saw to remove that concrete. Now we also have jackhammers and chipping hammers, but they kind of just bust it up. This cuts a nice straight line in the concrete, and you can use it to cut a good trench with good clean edges, and then you can take your jackhammer or your chipping hammer or even a sledgehammer and bust up the middle pieces, and then you can remove that concrete by hand so you can get down in there to dig and get to your pipe. Now, some history behind this guy. There's not a whole lot. This is something that kind of evolved. There isn't anybody that really invented this thing. It's pretty much a diamond embedded blade hooked to a chainsaw. And it works very similar to a chainsaw, it's just got a different blade on the end of it. Now, the blade is where some of your history might come into play, because this is a diamond embedded abrasive edge blade, which would actually date back to your ancient Egyptians who were using a flat copper saw with sand. And they put the sand down in the groove and they'd run that saw back and forth, and it was actually the silica in the sand that was cutting the stone, not really the blade. The blade wasn't sharp at all. So same principle here. This is not a sharp blade. It's just got diamond emplated abrasive edge that's doing all the cutting for you. The rest of it is basically just a chainsaw thing. And it runs like any other little small engine. It's going to have a choke back here. It's got a primer bulb, a throttle trigger, your pull cord, your gas filler cap. It's got a place where you can fill and check your oil. And then it does have a water hose connection here, which that is going to bring me to some of the PPE. Now we're going to go over how to crank this when we go outside. I'm going to get more in depth with it then. But let's talk about some of your PPE. First off, just about with everything we've got out there, you're going to want to wear some safety glasses. This thing throws up little pieces of rock, all kinds of dust. You don't want that stuff in your eyes because it is concrete. This motor is loud, so get you some kind of earplugs. And these little simple little twisty, shove them in your ear, earplugs are great, or you could get some of those ear muffs. Gloves. Gloves. PPE is going to be a big thing from now on that you're going to hear a lot about, especially when there's accidents on a job site. They're going to jump all over it. The other thing is, when you're running this saw, you're going to want to wear some kind of dust mask or respirator or something, because this is throwing out a concrete dust. Now, that can be very hazardous to your health. I didn't know anything about this 20 years ago, and we would just run these saws, no gloves, no glasses, wide open, dust flying everywhere, breathing that stuff in, covered all in it. You don't want to breathe in that concrete dust, because once it gets in your lungs, it doesn't go anywhere. So you're always going to want to have some kind of mask, which brings us back to this water hookup. This saw is designed to hook a hose into, and of course it's got its on-off switch here, a little tube that runs up here with a little port, there's one on either side, and sprays water on this blade. Well, what that does is it controls the dust. It basically throws the dust down to this sludge, and you can see some of it caked up here. That's why it's all this white stuff everywhere, and bleeding out these holes here. it keeps that dust down. It's turning it into like a mud. Yes, it's sloppy. Yes, it's muddy. It's nasty. That's why a lot of the guys don't like to run the water, but it's a safety feature. It's there for you. That concrete gets in your lungs. It doesn't ever go anywhere. It's not poisonous. It's not going to kill you immediately, but prolonged exposure to concrete dust causes a syndrome called silicosis, and it can kill you over time. So always wear some type of respirator, use this hose attachment, and of course the rest of your PPE. All right, well, I think that kind of covers our basics here. We're going to go outside, and I've got a little concrete block that I poured a couple days ago, and we're going to see if we can cut that thing in half. All right, before we get going here, there's some things you're going to have to check. On this side, most of your controls are on this side. You're going to want to check your gas. Now, this gas cap gets kind of vapor locked sometimes. So you're gonna undo that cap, and this is all visual inspection stuff. You're gonna look in that hole and shake the thing around and go, oh yeah, I got gas. Before you ever go out in the field with this thing, I just highly recommend you go ahead and fill this thing all the way up, because you don't want to get out there and not have any gas and then have to figure out where to get some gas from. The next thing, down here at the bottom, this is your oil cap. There's no dipstick on this. This is all visual inspection stuff. You're going to unscrew that, and you're going to look down in there, and you're going to see there is actually oil pouring out of it. So it's got plenty of oil. You just want it to be up to that cap. My dad used to say, as long as it's touching a couple of the threads down in there, you got plenty of oil. So that's how you check your oil. That's very important. If you don't have oil in this machine, you will burn it up, and it's a very expensive salt. So keep the oil in salt. And then of course here's your water hookup with your on-off. We're going to turn that on once we get this thing running. Now on the back side of this saw, there's a couple things you need to know about. First of all, you got this switch over here. This is your on-off and choke switch. All the way down is your stop or off. That's on with choke open, and then that's to choke it, is all the way up. The next thing is you got a safety switch here. If you were to take your hand off of that, it's going to shut down. You push that down, and then underneath you have your throttle trigger. That's how you're going to throttle it up to get some more speed out of it. And then you've got your primer bulb over here. When you before you crank this, you're going to want to pump this about 3 or 4 times to go ahead and prime your little carburetor in here. And then typically to start it, you're going to be on choke. You're going to pull that handle a few times. It might sputter and spit. But if it doesn't crank and stay running for you, put it in the open choke or the on position and try it then. Sometimes when it's real hot outside, you don't have to use the choke, and when it's really, really cold, you're definitely going to have to use that choke. But that's what you got on the back side. Alright guys, here we are. We're ready to go. I'm going to turn this water, I got the hose hooked up, I'm going to turn this water on in a second, but I'm going to crank this thing back up. Got my gloves, my glasses. We are going to be running the water, so the dust is going to be contained, and I'm only cutting this little block. I'm not cutting a whole several acres of concrete. If you're cutting a lot more, even though you're running the water, put your dust mask on. But for this, we'll be all right. We're going to choke it, we're going to pump our little bulb, we're going to put our hand on the trigger, and we move on. That was pretty quick, wasn't it? But as you see, this dust is now like a concrete mud, and it's all over the place. That's what you don't want going in your lungs. That's why you're gonna run the water when you do this. See how it didn't throw dust everywhere? It just kept it right down here on the surface, and it sawed straight through that concrete block pretty quick. You see how smooth that edge is? Bet you could polish that up and it'd look nice. But that's it. Now you're gonna clean up, you're gonna put this away. It is gonna make a mess, but hopefully you're doing this at rough end. You're not doing this at a lived-in house where you're tearing up floors and stuff. But that's how to use your concrete saw.